Oh, crap. I didn't do an intro. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Game Pass Grab Bag, your weekly podcast reviewing games from the Game Pass collection. I am Andrew, the Archmage of this episode. With me, our peasant, Keith.
Hello.
And our adorable pilfer, Liz.
Hey, guys.
And this week was Keith's pick. So that, you know what that means? It's either A, a platformer, or B, a roguelike. So, Keith, what did we play?
We played the roguelike Undermine.
And this game is brought to you by Thorium Studios. So, as we said, this is a top-down dungeon crawler roguelike, where you are an endless stream of peasants going down to the mines trying to figure out where these constant earthquakes are coming from. And as you keep going down deeper and deeper, you are finding more scary monsters and getting more gold to continuously upgrade your non-stop stream of peasants. So going around, Keith, was this a game or a pass for you?
There's things about it that kinda irk me, but as a whole, I think it's definitely a game. I think it's fun.
Liz?
I think for the amount of time I put into the game, I have to give it a definite game. Although I do think it's very simple in a way. And, I mean, I just think it was missing something special. But I loved it. I couldn't stop playing. It was a little bit addictive.
I, too, am also giving this a game. I did have a lot of fun with it. If you are enjoying roguelikes, this is right up your alley. But the thing that I had an issue with, which I first told Liz, is out of all the roguelikes we've been playing, what makes this one so different and so special? And the only thing I can think of before getting into it is I think it's very simple. And I also felt like you were progressing pretty well in the game. But this game also, too, has, I thought, a relatively interesting story. Did you guys enjoy it at all?
I just assumed it was purgatory, but I don't know.
No, it is not purgatory. I beat the game and it's not purgatory.
I didn't think there was a lot to the story, or maybe I just didn't delve deep enough. But I actually looked up because I was like, where is the story? I want to know more. And I read that the two guys who created the game left professional game development jobs. They met at Relic, and they wanted to pursue indie game development. And there's 3 dogs that you can get in the game, and there's an achievement to get all 3 dogs. And one of them actually does have a dog named Dylan, which is named after Carl Weathers' character from Predator.
Ooh.
That's really odd to name your dog after Carl Weathers' character from Predator. I mean,
It's a cute dog name, though.
Oh, no, it is. My favorite dog was Engine.
Human names for any animal are the best thing in the world, so a dog named Dylan is pretty fantastic.
But for me, I actually enjoyed the story. Starting off, it's something very simple. An archmage tells you as a peasant, hey, go to the mines, figure out why all these earthquakes are happening. But every time you beat a boss, you're kind of uncovering more and more what's going on. And you kind of find out that, maybe the archmage has some alternative motives.
I think my problem is that I found the game actually kind of difficult. And, well, I guess the bosses were difficult for me. And so I put in so many hours, but I didn't get very far. I was upgrading a lot, and I was uncovering the library and the alchemist, and I was progressing that way. But I just didn't find much of the story in the game.
Same.
Was I not looking in the right place? I don't know.
The story is a little bit hidden. Because every time you beat a boss, you basically have to go back to the mage and talk to him. And he will open up more. You'll start to uncover some other characters. And the other characters will kind of explain more as to what's going on as well. So, yeah, the story isn't, in your face. It is kind of something where it's you blink, you could miss it.
Yeah, I also wish that there was more humor in it. And there was a little bit with the 2 guards. I believe their names are Toadvine and Bathcat.
Yep.
And I thought their humor and their bickering was really cute, but there wasn't much of it. And then there was also the mushroom character, Beltrame. And I thought the character design was so cool, but I didn't know anything about him.
Yeah, it was a little shallow. I thought it was weird, too, with the 2 guards, like you were talking about, Cathbat and Toadvine. You're talking to them, and they're friendly at first. Then literally as soon as you enter the dungeon, which is the second map, you're fighting people that look like them. They're not exactly them, but they look like them. And I thought it was kind of confusing. Because as soon as I saw them, I was like, oh, they're friendly. They're going to be helping me. And then they started swinging their swords at me. It's like, okay, I guess I kill these people.
Was weird.
So I thought that was kind of a weird design. Because they didn't explain, too, why they're attacking you. The 2 guards guarding the posts don't attack you, but all the other ones do. So there are moments of the story that's like, I don't get why this is happening. But there is an overall story, and I thought it was okay. It wasn't something that made me want to keep playing. That wasn't what's driving me. But when we played like another roguelike, Dead Cells had a story as well, but it was super hidden. You basically had to like read tiny text and try to read descriptions of things to kind of figure out what was going on. But this one definitely put it more front and center, but it's still definitely something you can miss. But when you fight the final boss, you kind of figure out what's going on.
Yeah, you'd probably be surprised to find out I didn't catch any of the story. I just,
Well, you have zero interest in story in general.
Well, I was bummed because I was looking for it.
I like a good story if the point of the game is a story. I don't know. Roguelikes to me, it's
As
so...
you hate every RPG.
No, RPGs are built on having a good storyline. I like that. But a roguelike, they're just generally so simple of run, die, repeat. And to throw a story in that, it seems weird to me when it's something so repetitive that, I don't know. And they're usually just super shallow. They just don't exist, and it ends up feeling like a throwaway, and I'm just not going to waste extra time trying to dig into the lore of these mines when it really just doesn't matter, quite frankly. I'm just killing everything that moves when I go down there, trying to collect as much gold, and then repeat.
That's a good point. You're definitely not playing this for the story. So I guess the main reason you are playing it for then is the gameplay. And,
Some might say.
and as I said with like Liz, I'll ask you the same question, Keith. What makes this set apart from other roguelikes?
Quite honestly, I don't think there's a lot. I think from a gameplay perspective, the fact that you jump instead of roll for a dodge, that's sort of unique-ish, I guess.
You can jump. Ooh, this is a feature.
I think, I don't know. I honestly don't know. If with that question, I can't give you a good answer. But there is something that's strangely addictive about it at the same time. And maybe it's just because the runs are all so short. Well, not all. I mean, you can 15, 30 minutes or whatever if you're doing start to finish. But at the same token, if you just immediately jump as far as you can go, and you're maybe a little underleveled, your run might last 5 minutes and be done, and just pick it up again.
I think too that it's not very punishing, so that's kind of unique with it. Because I felt like you got to keep a good amount of gold, and you can obviously upgrade your backpack so you get to keep more. So I think that kind of like just made it less worrisome to play. Because there are some where it's like you just start over. And that's always, like, when you have a really good run and you start over and you get nothing, it's the worst.
See, I think it's funny that you say that because I was talking to Andrew about this yesterday, and I don't know if I used that exact word, but punishing is how I would describe this game. Maybe that's
really?
what makes it a little unique. Yeah, the fact that you lose chunks of your gold when you die, and obviously as you go through you can upgrade that so it doesn't happen. And at that point I would guess it does lose some of its punishing, but if you die too quickly, you lose 20% of your gold and then another 20% of your gold or whatever, however much you're at. And if you're not making up the amount that you lost from the last run, you're going backwards. And that kind of got frustrating to me.
If you're trying to save up for something expensive, and so you go in with 20,000 and you die fairly quickly, you are going to lose some of the stuff that you earned. And obviously when you're trying to build, that is frustrating. And then you also have what are they called, pilfers?
Yeah.
That try to steal your gold, which I thought was interesting that they did it, that every single time you swung for gold, they would appear. I thought it would have been better if they randomly appeared.
Yeah,
so
it got a little tiresome.
You weren't expecting it, but when you expect it every single time, it's just like, you just guard the gold.
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to say this too. If you don't like roguelikes, this game isn't going to change your opinion. It's still very much the same of going in, doing a run, dying, getting a little bit stronger, starting all over again, and rinse and repeat. For me, I think the only thing that made this a little bit better is I personally felt like I was progressing. Every time I was doing a run, I was still leaving with a good amount of gold or finding new relics that'll appear in other runs. And for me, I did feel like there was a good amount of progression. I actually felt like I was getting stronger. I felt like I was getting deeper every time I was playing. I didn't find it to be too punishing. I mean, I never felt like I was ever going backwards. But yeah, there wasn't any surprise mechanic with this that made it feel better or different than any other roguelike.
I feel like the pilfers kind of actually were. And I get what you're saying as far as them being a bit repetitive, where you know it's coming and you can just quickly like round up your gold, take a couple swings at the ones that get close by, and call it a day. But I don't know. I don't feel like that a lot of other games kind of have that, but that's like it's just such a minor thing that I agree with you. I don't think this game is changing anyone's opinion on a roguelike. You either like the style of game or you don't. And this one just plays a little differently, where Dead Cells is a platformer and this is a top down, but there's plenty of others like it on both sides. So, yeah.
Well, I think that this one also has a lot of gambling. Like they obviously have like they always have the Black Rabbit, which is a woman that has these games where you can gamble with your money. But what I mean is that you can get curses. It's like what you get when you open a cursed chest, you don't know. And so I feel like there was that element as well. Like you could play it very risky. And, there's also altars that you can pray on and you can get a blessing that also comes with a curse. So I thought you could play it safe. You could,
Yeah, this Undermine definitely does a lot of risk and reward kind of mechanics. So as Liz is saying, yeah, there's curses that obviously cause some sort of debuff on you, which can be really bad, or some of them are relatively just a nuisance. Like, they weren't that bad.
Some are actually kind of nice, like the one that automatically mines all of the gold.
Yeah, I actually found that kind of useful.
If there's gold, like, sometimes you just have a hole in the ground, and you can't reach the gold that's on the wall. If it automatically mines itself, that's a plus. You're getting more gold out of that. So I actually didn't even hate at least one or two of them. Kind of liked having them.
But there were some curses that were absolutely awful. Like,
it took you a long time to get my least favorite that I got all the time, which is when every torch and lantern shoots fireballs at you when you enter the room.
Yeah, which is real annoying. Or the pilfers will actually damage you if they touch you. So there's a couple curses that are really, really bad. But as Keith said, there's some that are like, this isn't that bad. So there is a nice risk-reward system.
I also wish that the game was more random. And I don't know if it's supposed to be completely random, but there were certain things that would always happen when I got a particular blessing, or I would finally get the boots that you could walk on air, and whenever I got those, the run barely had any rooms that had air. And so it always felt like there was this hindrance whenever I got something. Or like I was telling Andrew, if I got a blessing that was increased swing damage, I would immediately get a curse that had decreased swing damage. And it was always the same ones that I would get. And so for me, I knew right away whether or not it was worth it.
Well, so I think part of that, and curses I think probably work a little differently, but the blessings in particular, like the relics and like the potions, you have a very small pool of them by default, and you have to unlock the rest of them. So if you haven't unlocked a lot of them, you're going to get a lot of the same blessings each time. But I did find it, I didn't find it was all too frequently, at least not enough that I noticed, but I definitely caught a couple of times where I went, oh man, that was useless, and I just end up right where I started, and then probably spending some of my health down the road to get rid of that curse. But then I do have a nice blessing still, so.
Yeah, see, I always took like the blessings that comes with curses or anything like that. I didn't mind getting curses because you can get rid of them. There are potions you can drink to remove curses. You can spend money to remove some of these curses. So I was always for taking the curses and getting the reward for them. Even every once in a while you find like a demon lord who will give you a very powerful artifact, but you'll get a bunch of curses with it. And some of the items he has were amazing. One of the runs that I did, I ended up beating like one of the bosses I was stuck on for the longest time. He gave me a throwing item that you could basically have it sit there. So I would just throw it on the boss and run around and just keep dodging, and the thing just kept killing the boss for me. And it's like, well, this thing's amazing.
Question about that. Did it lock onto the boss, or...?
No. You would throw it out, and it would stay in its certain location, and you would hit the throw button again to recall it. So you could just keep it in a certain spot. You would still have to throw it and kind of put it in a location, but it would just sit there.
And gotcha, and then you just kind of kite the boss around it.
Yeah, and it was the same with like some of the ads. When I just did a regular run, I could just funnel everyone into one area, and they would run into my blade and all die.
But I felt like, going back, it was the same with if I had a ton of bombs, I would need keys and vice versa. I never had like what I needed, and I felt like it was very deliberate in the game. There were times where I would have like 20 bombs, and every single time I'd have chests that need like 3 keys, and it's like, I don't have one. But then the next run, I would have a ton of keys, and all I would need was bombs.
I think that's I mean this in a nice way, because I get what you're saying, but I think that's an in your head thing. Like, it's
But
one of those
like
things.
that with the relics and everything, though. I don't know. It just never felt random to me.
I don't know. I think it's just like a psychological thing of where you're just like, you don't ever feel like you have what you need because you're always building in this game, or you're always trying to get more, and everything gets progressively like or like more expensive or things like that. So it just, I don't know. There's just kind of always a feeling of want in this game, I feel like.
Yeah. Watching you play this, I never had any issues, at least with bombs. There was a good amount of times where I would like be desperate for keys. But I always notice with you, whenever you play, I guess I should explain the mechanic first. In Undermine, there's like 5 levels, and each one has like multiple layers you can go on. So the first one, you're going into the gold mine, then the second you go into Delve more, and then the third world is
Halls?
a crypt. Yeah, the Halls of Din, that's what it was. But anytime you get to these locations, you can fast travel to them. Which, obviously, when you're fast traveling, you can obviously keep kind of progressing a bit quicker, but the hindrance is you don't have as many artifacts, keys, and bombs. And you always fast traveled.
No, I didn't.
I saw a couple times where you didn't, and I noticed you had a bit more keys and bombs.
I feel like you watched me play like 3 times. And I do like to switch it up.
No. Anytime I saw you play, you always just took the shortcut. I almost never took the shortcut. I would always start from the beginning and go through, because I wanted to get as many artifacts, blessings, and keys and bombs by the time I got to the area that I'm supposed to be working on.
So I operated in the middle of this, and I'm guessing you probably did this, Andrew. It wasn't some revolutionary strategy that I had, but I would always, at the very least, go through the first floor of the gold mine, get the free relic that's on the level, then travel to the second area, travel through there. I think by that point, or you have to use keys at that point, but try and get a relic there, a bunch of gold, jump to the next one. So I kind of just take a free floor every time, and then I would fast travel.
Oh, see, I never did every floor. I would do the gold mine first floor, and then go to my location that I'm supposed to be at. I didn't think about that, going to like the first floor of each world.
Yeah, because as long as you don't jump to the next one, you can collect all the gold that's on there, usually some relics, a blessing, all that good stuff.
Well, I guess like what I'm thinking is like with Dead Cells, I felt like with Dead Cells I would get these like perfect combinations and I'd get really excited when I had them, and I didn't feel that with this game. Did you guys have a combination that you really liked, or that, I mean, obviously you can't pick what artifacts you get and stuff, but
I didn't feel like there was really combos. I mean, there would be ones that definitely complement each other, but I felt like there was any real combos, just I think because you said, you can't really choose what you get.
well, Dead Cells was random too, but I just felt like with this game, I mean, you played with a lot of same stuff over and over again, especially at the beginning.
So
where this, sorry, just to finish my last thought on that, is where I think this is very different from Dead Cells. Is Dead Cells, you had a very limited number of items that you could hold on to at a given time, whereas in this game you just keep picking them up. I don't think there was a cap on how many you could hold. So
Except for potions, yeah.
well,
yeah,
potions,
there wasn't any cap on relics or blessings, but yes, Liz, there was a handful of combos that I really, really loved. And I do agree where I think the game it is a bit random and procedurally generated, but I do feel like there is a bit of an influence. I do feel like you're kind of getting relics that kind of focus on one thing, either your melee, your ranged, or your bombs.
Or health. If I got one health one, I got multiple.
That's true, yeah. But why I think like there is a little bit of, the game is slightly predictable. They're few and far between, but there are some relics. If you get 2 relics, they actually combine together and make a very powerful like single relic. So like there's a mirror you get where you can melee projectiles back to the enemies. And then there's another relic where skulls will float around you and they'll block projectiles. If you get those 2 items and combine them together, it creates these floating mirrors that go around you, and basically any projectile that gets near you just gets deflected automatically back to the enemy, which was very helpful for a boss fight that I did. But like there's over like 64 relics I think there are, And the fact that I was able to get these two very random, very hard find relics pretty close to each other to create, be able to create that. That's why I don't think it's completely random. Like, I feel like there is a little bit of an influence. But my favorite combination, there's a relic called the Capture Bomb. And every time you kill an enemy with a bomb, your bomb's overall damage permanently increases. So I got that and the Bombushka bombs, which blow up into a million little bombs.
Good gravy,
And
baby.
then there's another relic called the Blast Shield that I could not take damage from my own bombs. So I could just throw those Bombushkas everywhere and they would just kill everything and they wouldn't hurt me at all. And that is, when I had that combo, that's when I beat the game. I started from floor 1 and literally played through all of it. I took out 2 bosses, the 4th and the 5th world boss, with those relics. Because I was doing, like, my bombs were doing over almost 1,000 damage each. And then with the Bombushkas turning into a million tiny bombs, each one doing over 1,000, yeah, I took out anything, like, right away.
See, one thing I think I would do differently if I were to start from scratch is, because of the pool of relics that can get so large, is just not unlock the ones that I didn't like, because there was definitely some I just felt like weren't really all that useful.
Oh yeah, like the tent. I always got the tent, and the thing.
Or the
was
one that
annoying.
it decreases, was it range damage, but increases swing, or vice versa? It was
Yeah, I
the
think
opposite.
there's 2 of them. They counter each other.
But no, I agree. So there is. I don't know if I'm sure you saw it, but there's a pedestal where you can actually place a relic, and you can pick it up again in another run. So if you have a really good relic and you're like, oh, I'm going to lose this run, but I want to save this relic, you can place it on that pedestal, and you may end up running across it with another one of your peasants that you play again.
I always put the one that I didn't like on it.
Yes, actually, that is my tip. If you place a relic on there, you will never find it again until you go back to that room. So one of the relics that I always hated was the lunchbox. It stored extra food, but I almost never had extra food. So I thought it was the most useless relic. So yeah, I put it on that pedestal and I never picked it up again because it's like, I don't want this relic ever. So yeah, if there's a relic you never want to pick up, yeah, put it on that pedestal and never pick it up again.
I never noticed that. I think I have the helmet on there or something. The one that gives you a 1 block of armor or something that
Oh yeah,
goes
I never
away.
cared. I never cared for those armor things.
Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't unlock that. That's good to know.
I also was just thinking about the shop, and a lot of the potions are kind of useless, especially when you buy it through the shop. So if I stumbled upon duplicate food, I would do that in the shop. But if you buy it in the shop, it's like triple the price of the food that you can buy there. So it doesn't make sense to buy it. But I noticed there are a couple of potions that were like really overpriced for what they were, like what you would get. So the game kind of tricks you too.
A little bit. But
Are
there's
you talking-
achievements to spend money in the shop, so I'm going to spend money.
Oh, that's true.
I was
Are
very
you-
frugal. You were just like spending left
Oh,
and
yeah.
right. I wanted to save my gold.
I think they're kind of ultimately same. Are you talking about the ones that are like in the mines or the one that's on like the top floor?
The ones that in the mines. I besides upgrading my character, I never spent much in the hub world.
Yeah, I mean, obviously buying stuff. Well, I don't think it matters too much. The game does a weird like increase decrease on base prices, but there never really seemed to be any rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, it's random sales kind of thing.
But yeah, if you find a nice sale, it's kind of cool, I guess. You can buy like I don't know, something for 75 gold or whatnot.
See, that's another thing though. I always found food discounted when I had full health. I
But
don't know.
also maybe too, do you think this is why you're always short on bombs and keys because you would never buy them from the shop? I would.
Yeah, but you buy like one, like before you go down. I feel like that's not very helpful.
No, see, I think I figured it out. This is what I was getting at. It's like the whole Subaru theory. You never notice many Subarus driving down the road, but if you're driving in one, you're like, oh, that's a Subaru. Oh, that's a Subaru. That's a Subaru.
I don't know if I've ever heard this theory.
Well,
The
I'm
Subaru
making
theory?
up the name for it on the spot. But like any given car, like I don't know. I feel like once I'm like, if I'm in a car that I don't know anyone who owns it or something, I just notice it all the time. Or I know someone who owns like a specific type of car. Every time I see that type of car on the road, I'm like, oh, I know that person has that car, and like I just notice it more.
That's
There's-
really weird. I don't.
I know what you, okay, I agree with you. I know what you're saying. For me, the thing that I always caught off guard when I was working, my coworker always said, she's like, you ever notice when a button on an elevator is hit and it's lit up, somebody will always come by and still hit that button again. Like, they still will touch that button. Even though it's already lit, it's clearly already activated.
That's
And
so
I
true.
never noticed that until she said that. Now, every time I'm at an elevator, I always notice someone will hit the button again. Even though
How many
someone
times do
clearly
you
pressed
do it?
Oh,
And then
never.
go, oh, dang it.
Never. But it always makes me chuckle. I always look at that lit button, and then I laugh that someone else pushes it. And it's like, oh, good job. You made the elevator come faster.
It's the same when you want to cross the street and someone hits the button. Someone will see someone hit that button, but they will still go over and make sure that it's hit properly. I see that all the time.
That's what I'm saying. It's just a weird mental thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
it's okay. I just thought of another random thing that bothered me with the game. So when you craft a relic and you go over to get it, a pilfer can come and steal it. What bothers me is that you can get there first, but when it comes, you have no option to grab it and you can't fight it off.
So I figured out why this was happening.
Okay.
So if you create more than one relic within, like, the hub world, you can only keep one. So the first one you keep, you actually get to keep that one. But they didn't want you to start, like, a beginning run with, like, 20 relics. Especially some of the relics that you're creating are very powerful. So it was a way for them to prevent you from basically kind of cheating. Not really cheating, but, like, I don't know. They didn't want to make it too easy. So you can have one relic that you created as soon as you start a run. But, yeah. Because there was a couple of times I created, like, 5, and I was like, sweet, this is going to be great. And, yeah, the pilfers took them away.
See, I didn't do it very often because I wasn't very good at the game, and so it took me a while to get the purple. So for me, that's why I didn't connect that. But it's like, I wish they had told me because I would have just waited.
Yeah. Same here.
It took me a handful of times before I realized what was going on. I went, oh, dang it. Because I was annoyed too. I was like, what? Get back here, you stupid pilfer.
I think something with these games as well is I kind of wish that there were more bosses. Because there weren't that many bosses in this game, and I just felt like I would have felt more progression if I was able, to beat them more frequently. Because it took me a couple goes for the worm guy. I don't know what
The worm was kind of annoying.
Selt. That was his name.
It's just, yeah, I only fought, I killed the first 2, and I fought the third one, which is really frustrating to me. And I think one of the things that, I think maybe that's my hook to this game, is for me it felt a little bit difficult, but also beatable. And so I just wanted to keep going.
But that's a good point. That's at least one thing I can say that makes this roguelike a little bit more accessible, is, as I was saying, I always felt like I was progressing. So if you're playing a game like Dead Cells is honestly 98% skill. If you're just bad at the game, you're not going to win. Like, you can maybe struggle enough to maybe get to the end and maybe beat the boss, but it is just a struggle. It is all about skill. This one is very much, you can build your character strong enough or find the right relics that you could finally take out the boss.
I never felt discouraged. I never felt like there's no way I'm going to be able to beat this boss.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, I just kept collecting gold and just looking forward to buying certain things. Like, I loved upgrading the gold sack and stuff. So for me, I never was just like, oh, I just can't play this game anymore. It's too hard. But I don't know. I just wish there was a couple more bosses to make me feel better about myself.
See, I know this, we just talked about this with Forager, so maybe it's just a little bit of recency or something, but there is an air of an idle clicker game to me. Obviously, it's not idle in any aspect, but the way the progression worked, and as we joked about in Forager, I play so stupid amounts of idle games for no good reason. So, like, I feel like I can spot them a mile away, and there's just something about this that, and I think part of what I liked about it is it felt like it took too long to get an upgrade sometimes, but I always wanted to keep going because it was always attainable.
I don't know. I don't think it felt like a clicker game. To me, it felt like a roguelike.
The progression did, at least. Like, not the gameplay in any capacity, although
Sure.
I did do a lot of clicking. Somebody out there's got to play a lot of idle games on their phone. Hit me up.
I was curious. So I was reading a little bit about them developing this game, and something that kind of like jumped out at me was that they said that there's a little bit of RPG in this. I don't understand that. What's RPG about this game?
Nothing?
Like, it was their website. Like, they were the developers talking about developing this game, and I was like, RPG.
I don't know. I feel like that's kind of like how Nelly would have Willie Nelson as an inspiration to his music.
Wait, is that a real thing?
Not specifically,
Oh,
but
I
there's a
thought
lot
that
of
was
artists that they'll list their inspirations, and they're just like, no, you sound nothing like that.
I mean, the only thing I could say is like kind of RPG element is you like upgrading your character, but that's about it. And even then, I don't know if I really, in the way this game does it, I don't know if I really consider it an RPG kind of element.
I was like, whenever I think I know what a term means, like I figure out like maybe it's wrong, and I was like, maybe I don't know what RPG means.
Maybe just like the dungeon crawler aspect, like a Diablo.
I guess. I don't know.
I'm pulling straws here. I don't know.
Because the only thing you really kind of level up are the familiars. And every time you restart a run, the familiar starts back at level 1, and the max they go up to level 3. Which also I wanted to touch base. Did you guys care for the familiars?
I thought that the gold collector was just so slow at it. I felt like when I watched you, even when yours was at the same level as mine, I thought it was so much faster. And I was like, it must just be because I think it's not doing a good job, because I wanted to do better. I don't know. But I just thought he was really slow, even when I leveled him up.
Well, does it gain speed, or do you mean just like the amount of gold it collects?
Yeah.
The speed and the amount of gold that he collects.
So your starting familiar is a canary. It will collect gold for you that falls on the ground, and it also increases the value of the gold with each level. So at level 1, yeah, it's very slow at collecting the gold, and it doesn't do any multiplier for the gold. Once it gets to level 2, it goes a little bit faster, and it does like a 10% increase for the gold it's collecting. But once it gets to level 3, it like collects everything. As soon as it touches the ground, the canary collects it, and it does like a 20% increase.
Because I think mine just wasn't very bright, because he would just go like to the gold that was the furthest away from each other, and I was like, that doesn't help me, dude. Like,
that's just probably when it's like level 1. As far as like the other familiars go, though, like you do not realize how good the canary is until you don't have it. Anytime I would take another familiar, I would always be like, yeah, I'm taking the canary back. I don't want this anymore.
You told me that, and I was thinking about it, and I didn't switch familiars. Because for me, I was like, dude, I'd rather focus on the gold.
You will notice the canary once you get it to level 3. Once it's level 3, your gold just skyrockets.
So one thing I felt like I noticed, and I don't know if you did, Andrew or Liz, but if it was like a matter of like the more gold I spent, the gold amounts obviously didn't increase, but the amount of actual drops or kind of pieces that would come out seemed to increase, or there just seemed to be a better chance of getting the high value ones versus just like the tiny little nuggets.
Yeah, I noticed that too. The more you played it, it would scale a little bit more. So even though you're starting at the very first level, yeah, when you first play the game, there's just little specks of gold. But even after playing a couple rounds, yeah, you were getting bigger nuggets, even though you're playing still the beginning.
Which brings me to one of my biggest complaints about the gameplay, is the scaling. It felt like this is where I didn't feel like I was ever really increasing well, because as soon as I increase my damage, all of a sudden I just start getting harder enemies at earlier floors.
I noticed that.
And it just didn't make sense. That bothered me a lot.
I never noticed that until you actually brought that up with me as well. And yeah, so the game does do a bit of scaling. It's not doing one-to-one scaling. So like you are still doing some progression, but yes, the enemies definitely are getting stronger and having more health the more you're playing the game, which always irritates me when a game does that. Like, what's the point of progression if the enemies are getting stronger as well? That always irritates me. But like I said, it's at least not one-to-one. So you can still eventually get strong enough that you're still killing enemies in one hit earlier on in the game. But yeah, I did think that was really odd.
But I will say I did like some of the enemies that they introduced to the earlier floors. Like there was a guy that threw a lot of bombs, and I felt like sometimes he was actually helpful.
Yeah.
Because he would get the gold that was like behind some stone that I didn't feel like blowing up myself. But what enemies did you guys hate the most or like the most?
Oh, the worst were the bats. The bats are the most obnoxious things in the world.
You talk about the big purple ones?
Yeah,
The sound
because they would do a
ones?
ton of damage. They had really good range, and they were just obnoxious.
Yeah, they shot too fast.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't get in and out really quick enough without just without your throwing. I didn't like really any of the ranged enemies just for that point. They just all kind of seemed to be a nuisance. I think the one I hated the most, though, at least as far as I got into the game, was on the third floor of the halls. The one that just kept spawning the little toads or whatever they were.
Oh
because
yeah.
it spawned them so fast, and you'd just be overrun with them real quickly if you weren't paying attention.
And the poison actually does like chunk away at you too.
Yeah.
Oh, you talking about the druid? It's not a
Yeah, the
druid.
druid.
It's a druid dude or something like that. I think it's supposed to be
Druid.
the druid.
When I was uncovering the library, it took me a couple of goes because I kept getting these. I don't know what they do. They teleported, and then all of a sudden there'd be 3 of them right next to me, and they'd just blast me. And I didn't see them anywhere else, but they were awful. I was like, how am I supposed to beat these guys? And there was 4 of them. So they would teleport, and then they would transform into like 2 or 3 of themselves, and right next to me.
Yeah, this is what we're kind of talking about with the scaling. Because, so there's a big kind of wave-based fight that you do on the third world, where you're trying to open a library. When I did it, my 3 waves were pretty simple. But I got there earlier than you did, Liz. So by the time you got there, your character was much stronger. And so it was giving you harder
Wasn't that
enemies.
strong?
Well, your character was definitely more level than mine because you got your throw maxed out like pretty quick. But yeah, so I think they gave you more difficult enemies because your character was technically stronger than mine was. And yeah, so you had a harder like wave fights than I did.
Well, I can tell you that fight changed every time because I did it probably, I don't
It
know,
did.
a handful of times. Yeah, and I think, and there was once I was really close to it, but then the next time I just got like a really easy wave. It was just a bunch of weak enemies for the first 2, and then I think some like gargoyles on the last. I just blew them up with bombs, and oh, cool, that was easy.
Yeah, that sounds like my fight. I think that's just like one of the moments where I think it kind of scales a little bit. It's kind of the unfortunate luck of the draw.
Yeah, weird RNG in the game.
Yeah. So Liz, I wanted to ask you first. What did you think of the graphics of the game?
I really like the enemies. Overall, I really did enjoy it, but I just thought that there's only so many floors. Like, maybe make them just a little bit more unique.
See, I thought you would instantly love the graphics. Because, I don't know if you noticed, Keith, but these graphics, and honestly, I think overall the design of the game is exactly like Graveyard Keeper.
I don't think so.
As soon as I saw this game, my theory was this game takes place at Graveyard Keeper. Heck, maybe all the bodies in Graveyard Keeper are the dead peasants that are dying in the mines.
Maybe the people, but like, I don't think anything else.
I thought it was very similar. Like, obviously some of like the character designs, but like the pixelation of the game in the
Graveyard Keeper was way more pixelated.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It
I'm
was
trying
way
to look it
more.
up right now.
This game didn't feel gloomy. Like, I for instance, like the second mine area that you get to has these like fluorescent blues, and
That's actually good. I actually didn't think about that. But for a game that the entire game takes place within a mine, yeah, you're right. It didn't feel gloomy. Like, it really felt bright and colorful to me.
yeah,
I thought each of the worlds were very distinct, but you still had an idea of like what was going on, even though it's like this is a whole new area. You could still figure out, okay, there's gold there. I mine that for gold. These are the pots that'll drop items.
I really like the look and the atmosphere of it all. But I did wish that it just changed more throughout the levels, because there really aren't that many. So for me, I'm like, have some like different bushes and stuff in like the blue area. It just kind of got a little samey after a while. When you're playing it for like over 20 hours, I don't even know how much time I put into this game. It was a lot. But after a while, it's just like, give me something new to look at.
It recorded what, 48 hours? But the timer kept going even when you turned
No, it
your
was in
Xbox
the
off.
60s.
Oh, you were in the 60s?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think I hit out like 100, but same thing. Like, if you just shut off your Xbox, if you don't fully quit out of the game or change over to a different game, the counter just keeps on ticking.
Yeah. So I think mine was probably the most accurate. Mine's, I think, like 22 when I finally beat it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was gonna say about the graphics. I think as a whole, they felt very just indie game, and I'm fine with that. I know what I'm getting into when I'm playing the game. But I did think they had some really cool attention to detail. Like, I think I pointed out to you before you even started the game, one of the first things I noticed that was just really, really cool, I guess, about their design was they went into the aspect of things actually reflect off of water.
Yeah.
So if there's a torch that's sitting in the middle of some water, you can see it reflecting, and as you walk by, you block that, and then you see your reflection. And I don't know, that's something that for the level of graphics was pretty cool.
Yeah, one of the worlds is actually like a crystal cave. I think it's the fourth world, and yeah, you can see your character's reflection anytime you're by the wall. But as far as like the graphics go, what I really enjoyed is I never lost my character, even on the run where I won, and I was dropping 1,000 bombs. Everything on the screen's blowing up. Gold when it hit the ground was blowing up. I never felt like I was losing my character. I thought everything was just well defined. I could actually see what enemies were what. I could see where my characters were, and I could see projectiles. I never felt like I was getting hit by something that I didn't know what I was getting hit by. And I think that is just really goes to show just actually how good of a job they did with the graphics. Because especially in a game like this, when a ton of stuff's going on and there's a bunch of enemies, it's easy to get lost. But I never felt that way.
I also felt it was very easy to find the enemies that you really need to focus on as well.
Yeah.
So they have these like little green flying things that shoot at you. And so the red ones are even more annoying. And even if there was like 20 enemies on the screen, I could always just find them. And I think that's great that they didn't just like have like 5 different types of slimes and 5 types of this and 5 types of that. Like I genuinely felt like they put a lot of time into like the character models.
Yeah, there's not a bunch of recoloring of enemies. You're not finding the same one.
The flying ones are bigger. They shoot more. Like there was differences that I could very easily distinguish.
Yeah, it's definitely a creature you could see and be like, I know it's going to shoot something at me, but depending on the floor you're on, it's going to add a different variation to it. So like you could at least still kind of have an idea as to what it's going to do. But either way though, besides the flying bugs, the bats had I think 2 different skins, and then the skeletons. That's just about it. Every other enemy was unique. There wasn't a ton of recoloring and reusing of the same monsters. So every time you're going to a new world, it actually would feel fresh.
And they attacked you different ways. Like they had that wimpy archer, the coward one, that shot 3 sometimes, but then would shoot 1 arrow. So I always liked seeing new things that were going to attack me.
And I don't know if you guys ever noticed, but you do have a bestiary, and you could actually look up the monsters that you fought. And a lot of monsters actually have strengths and weaknesses. So like the archers, they were extra weak against lightning. So if you knew you had a lightning attack, you could try to use that against them. Some of the monsters, like the gargoyles, were weak against the bombs. Like there actually were pros and cons to some of the enemies you were fighting.
I didn't realize that. I did notice it with the gargoyles, and specifically when they go to stone, that's when they're susceptible to bombs, it seemed like.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that across all of it that it would. But that is cool.
And there were tidbits about the miners when they died as well, but I would always just hit A.
It was always just for something comical.
Yeah.
Like my character, she died and left 16 kids behind, all of which are peasants.
That's
that was like
funny.
one of the things.
It's so comical.
Well, it's just kind of funny to say. I don't know. I thought it was funny. They're all peasants. One of them is my guy died, but he forgot to leave the stove on. Or he forgot he left the stove on. They're just meant to be kind of funny. There weren't like anything to be serious.
That one was funny.
You don't have to be rude, you jerk.
A real knee slapper.
What was the funny ones you came up with, huh? That you had?
I didn't pay attention.
Oh yeah, see? You don't have to be rude. You don't
I'm
even
just
have any.
saying, having 16 orphan peasants isn't funny.
In the context of
What's
the
wrong
game,
with
it's
you?
funny because you guys are just an endless
What?
wave of peasants. I don't know. Forget it.
I don't know. I'm with Andrew on this one actually. That's a valid point.
Before you ask, I don't remember the music.
All right.
It got a little old,
Yeah.
I will
I think
admit,
I
but at
blocked
the
it
same time,
out.
I don't know. I didn't really notice it.
I thought the music
Yes.
got a little old too, but the soundtrack definitely is small. But it didn't annoy me.
It eventually, even the sound effects, they eventually just go back into
Yeah,
your brain.
it's forgettable.
You don't realize it's going on.
It is forgettable, but I can at least attest to this. This is definitely a game, though, you do have to play with volume on. Specifically, once you get to the second world, there are these enemies called the imps that basically they clap their hands and the ground beneath your feet explodes. But they clearly make a loud noise every time they clap. They laugh and they clap. And if you do not have your sound on, you will sometimes not realize they're in the room and it could kill you. And I know because this happened to me, the baby got a hold of the remote and turned the volume off. As soon as I entered the room,
You didn't hear the laughter.
I didn't hear the laughter and I got blasted and I died and I lost my run. And I was like, well, Now I know I need to keep the volume on. So, even though the music and sound effects aren't the most entertaining, they do help you in the game, though.
Yeah, but you could always, turn off the music, put on your own music, put on your favorite podcast.
Technically, yes, you could do that with any game.
But you wouldn't lose anything in the music, though. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You could legitimately cut out the music and you'd be fine. You just need the sound effects.
Yeah, you could also do that, like Guitar Hero. Just turn off the music in Guitar Hero and just listen to a podcast.
Now, that would be a real challenge. No, I'd, listen to some different music entirely.
Play classical music while rocking out to, Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe some good old-fashioned butt rock.
So yeah, the music and sound effects are definitely really forgettable. But
guys, callbacks are funny. You got to remember those. Keep them up.
Did you guys think the achievements were at all any good?
I had fun striving for them, but then when I finally got them, because I didn't look how much they were worth, some of them were 5 points, and they were very grindy. And when I saw that, this is horrible for achievement hunters. I forget which one it was, but I was working for it for a while, and I got 5 points for it. I don't know. I think they're some of them are fun, but they're very grindy, and they're not worth what they should be worth.
See, I think everything's really attainable, and they are grindy, yes, but at the same time, it's really just playing the game over and over and over again and just doing what you're supposed to do in the game. But I get, I agree with you. It's just, I don't know, they weren't very interesting, I guess is the big thing. They were just play the game.
Yeah, so I agree. Overall, the achievements, it's definitely not for achievement hunters, but I think at least quite a bit of the achievements are relatively attainable. It's just going to take some time, and at least, I know you enjoy it, Liz. I did feel like it was drip-feeding me achievements. The more you just kept playing, it would just be you spent a certain amount at the store, or, hey, you upgraded your weapon to the max. You entered a new world, here's an achievement. You beat a boss, here's an achievement. So I really enjoyed the aspect that they would kind of drip feed you some here and there.
I think once you get on a roll, they're easy to get some of them. Once you're getting a lot of gold in one run, it's easy to upgrade things, but I feel like I'm just not good enough at the game, I guess.
So my final score for achievement, I ended up playing, I think my final time was about 22 hours. I beat the game. I got 590 gamer score.
355.
And I'm at 390.
So I think the amount of time that I put in, I don't think that's really worth it. For achievements only. But I agree. I did like being drip fed them.
So the time to beat, as it's listed for the main story, you're looking at about 21 hours. To beat all the extras, which I don't think this is accurate, it says 30 hours. Because after you beat the game, there actually is multiple things you can do. There's the Undermine. One of the things you unlock, you basically start fresh. You just get to select certain things. So your character that is starting from level 1, there's 2 relics. You can pick one of them. There's 2 familiars. You can only pick one familiar. There's 2 curses. You have to pick a curse. Then there's 2 blessings, and you have to pick one of the blessings. So every time you're doing the Undermine, it's kind of this fresh run, and it's just a lot more challenging. I don't quite understand the whole reward of it. I just know it's just kind of another game mode you can play. And then, of course, too, you can actually just keep playing the regular mine, but you're increasing the difficulty. So every time you completely beat the mine, you get a relic that increases the difficulty of it. And there's an achievement, I think, to get 30, to do it with 30 of those relics. So that's going to take a very long time. The achievements overall in the game, they're fun, but definitely nothing worth playing the game for. All right, so getting into our final thoughts. Keith, what did you think of Undermine?
So I thought it was a ton of fun. It can be frustrating at times, and I don't know why I'm playing this. I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. But I can also lose 2 hours just playing it, not realizing it. So as far as I guess a final score, it's a really fun roguelike. And I would definitely recommend it because it's just challenging enough, I think, to be fun, but it's also very simple. But there's a lot of other better ones. I think Dead Cells is a lot more fun. So I'd say a 77.
I'm surprised you did that low. I thought for more you would enjoy this so much more.
It's weird. I didn't. I'm conflicted about it.
So I enjoyed it. As I said, it's if you don't like roguelikes, this isn't going to change your stance on it at all. But I found this very simple. You swing your axe, you throw your axe, you drop bombs, and you jump. Like, that's the extent of the gameplay, is like kind of what you're doing. I felt like this game was really good at drip feeding you progression. Your character, I felt like, was getting stronger each run I was doing. Felt like I was getting achievements here and there. I will say I agree with my co-host where I kind of felt like I was starting to hit a brick wall. I felt like I was stuck in the third boss for the longest time. And I thought the scaling was a little bit odd. But overall, I found this to be overall pretty relaxing. I never felt stressed about it. As Keith said, you could play just for a couple hours, do a couple runs. I thought I did a really good job saving your location, so even if I'm in the middle of a run, I could stop and it'd keep me right where it was.
Like a save feature.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No. Back in the day, Keith, you were talking about pausing the game. You're like, this game you could pause. Cool, Keith.
Never.
But yeah, so I think the game was a lot of fun. I think I'd give it an 80. It didn't do anything to really kind of change the formula of things, but I thought it was relaxing. I enjoyed my time with it. I thought the story was interesting enough, so yeah. You might want to check it out.
So I think I'm going to give it an 83. I was really unsure because I was addicted to this game. I couldn't stop playing. But I definitely think there needs to be more story. I do like that even though you don't really get to change up your weapons. Your weapon changes by like getting things that can make it so that it shoots off in 3 different directions or it'll ricochet. So I actually was just thinking like there really weren't any other weapons. But I think they did a good job with that. It's addicting. I would go in thinking like, oh, I'm going to play 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden, like he said, it's 2 hours. And you're like, holy crap. So looking at Metacritic, it's TBD. I think everything was around like between 70 and 90. But one critic who gave it a 70 said, the game is also just beautiful to look at, with highly detailed and varied character models and map layouts. Its satirical, lighthearted story is a breath of fresh air in a genre that mostly puts out overly serious and grid-marked titles. The small twists on the overcrowded roguelike genre are almost enough to set the game apart. And he wrote some more, but I mean, overall, I think people really like the game on Metacritic.
Sorry, our co-host isn't on there.
No co-host. There's not many reviews, so.
Lame.
I don't even think this game's been out a full year, has it?
No, I think it literally came out like a week or two ago.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was no, like, really high scores. I mean, 90 is a high score, but there's no hundreds, no zeros. It was just very much good game.
Yeah. Speaking of our co-host, we do have on our Facebook a post there. We are looking for recommendations as to what we should give him for a nickname. Oh, can't say he. I don't know. We don't. The only thing we know is that they write in French. But yeah, we're trying to figure out a name. We've had a couple suggestions, but yeah, we're always looking for more.
Keep it appropriate. I know you're all a bunch of rowdy folks out there.
It's hard because you never know what's offensive nowadays. Because I got a couple, but I'm like,
Yeah. I'm offended that you won't say the things.
You told me not to.
I'd say, yeah. I always like to play on the side of, if I'm not sure, it's best to just not do it.
But anyway, I've been your Hardcore Gamer host, Andrew. You can find me on Xbox Live at Firebird01952. Thank you all so much for joining us this week. If you want to write us an email, we're at GamePassGrabBag@gmail.com. We're on Facebook at Game Pass Grab Bag, and YouTube. You can Google us. Keith, where can people find you?
On the internet.
I almost said something inappropriate.
What? It was going to be like the sex offender registry?
Your mom's house.
All right. See.
We can cut that out.
No problem. Or I might keep it in. Liz,
No, because...
Keith is not a sex offender.
No. Liz, you can find her on Twitter at Liz the Noob, but not EW, or at EW, but it doesn't matter. Good night.
All right, everyone. That was an awful outro. Good job, guys.
Sorry, Liz.
Bye, guys.
You can do your proper outro.
No, I liked it.
All right, everyone. We hope to see you again next week.